Assuming COVID infections stay the same or better in July, we'll be planning for all learners to return to campus for the 21-22 school year. We've have been reflecting on this year, and through our conversations with learners and families at those video like town halls, etc. We're in the process of creating some flexible on-campus programs for our Woods program teens. So the oldest of our teens in the Woods program, we're going to have some probably long-term flexibility plans. So for those teens, I mean, we already have had off-campus plan and extended campus plans for teens in the Woods that do things like dual credits and additional internships, etc. But next year, we're planning to add some flex times during the day for our teens who are all current on their work. And so if they're current, and they can come into campus a little later. So more info to come. We don't have it all worked out yet, but we've been really working hard to make our schedule next year conducive for that. And the Woods staff, the oldest teen staff, will be sharing more of that at the August PPCs. If you have a learner in another age level who feels medically fragile or has some other need for an alternative schedule next year, we will be happy to have that conversation. What we know, it has been clear in our town hall conversations as well as our staff conversation is that we want to create and make sure that we can support a Montessori environment for children and teens at our school. We can do that best when children and teens are on campus. So although we know that there may be a need if there is a flare in the pandemic again, to most certainly have some more options, we just have to make plans for what we know right now. And what we know right now is that the infection level for COVID is as low as it was last June. And so we're we're hoping that all of the vaccinations that have happened and that things are in a good place and maybe they'll stay there. And so if that's the case, then we'll plan for everyone to be on campus in the fall. So if you have a child or teen that is not going to be in the Woods program next year and you want to talk about a specific plan, an alternative plan because they're medically fragile or have some other really big need, we want to make sure that we help you find a plan for that and make something happen if at all possible. So we will have a way for you to communicate that to that. So don't start yet. Feel free to reach out to me if you have just a pressing question. But if, there was just a few, thank you all for doing the survey. There's just a few families who really wanted that outside of that Woods level, that high school age level. And so there will be a time and place for you to communicate that. But right now, assuming that things are like they are now or better, we're expecting that everybody else will be on campus. So that is super exciting to look forward to. After talking with all the levels over the last couple of weeks, that is their intention. And so what we know is the impossible things they've done, that the teachers have done this year, which is supporting on-campus learning, supporting hybrid learning, and supporting full-time off-campus. Unlike some schools, we tried to keep them in their class instead of moving them to an full-time off-campus class. So by doing that, by keeping them with the children that they know best, the families they know best, it was creating a lot of work for them. And so we do not want to repeat that again moving forward. And so we're planning on, making sure that all the things we've put in place, all the mitigation efforts, all the sanitizing efforts, all of the social distancing components we'll keep doing next year. There'll be some adjustments, I'm sure, with that. But we want to make sure that we can do a full Montessori program, which means we want learners back on campus. So anyway, I've just been so mesmerized. So yeah, keep looking in the cupola notes this summer for ways to communicate if you have a child that's medically fragile or has some need for an alternative plan. If we're back on campus, which is the plan in the fall, unless they are in the Woods program, there'll be some flexibility for that as well. And then, I was just, when I was walking through the building over the past couple of weeks, and frankly, just mesmerized by the normalcy that's been created with face masks in the building, even for our really youngest 3-year-olds. So please take a moment at PPCs this coming Wednesday and Thursday and thank these incredible staff members for making this look so easy. I know it wasn't easy, but they really did it. And, we know there's a lot going on in our nation and even our state about conversations around face masks. And as I think everyone knows on the call, they are still required in schools. And so we'll see if those parameters change either at the state or the federal level. And then we will see what our staff feel about that. What the staff, there is a consensus on already for next school year is that we want to create outside time next school year, not this school year, for learners to not wear masks. The guidelines right now from the CDC are as if they're within 3 feet, they should still wear masks outside. But we're hoping that we think that's probably going to change in the next few months from the CDC. And we also think that the process of, how we go outside and, trying to have people a few feet away and communicating, it's really hard, especially with those youngest kiddos. But anyway, so those are some things that there already is a full consensus from our staff, assuming that the CDC adjusts that, which we think that will probably happen about that 3-foot guidance outside and not wearing masks. So we're really fortunate that we can just focus on our community here and not get caught up in the political conversations about face masks. And I know it's confusing because of vaccinated or non-vaccinated. And I assume most of you know on the call, that's a very complicated thing. Although we have 50 of our staff members out of about, I think, 63 that are either fully vaccinated or have had at least one vaccine of the COVID vaccine. Some staff don't want to share that. Some families don't want to share that information for a multitude of reasons. So we assume that's probably a little bit higher than that. Trying to gauge and get that information about vaccines from our learners and adjusting our parameters on campus is very complicated. And at this point, we are just gathering information about that, whether we will actually look at taking in that information about vaccination and or booster shots, which we also understand those are coming too, and trying to track all that at school level. We don't know yet. We're listening, we're learning, we're understanding what some best practices are, who's trying that, how they're gaining that information, what we might or might not do differently because of that. So just know for now that we'll probably be sharing more of that information. Keep checking your cupola notes over the summer. But at this point, we're in a research and development conversation with how that's going to work moving forward. We know that there are families in our school community that do not want to bring their children on campus unless we stay masking. And we know that there are families in our community that really don't want their children to wear face masks anymore when they're in a learning environment. And so we will do our best to keep navigating all of that and making sure, number one, that the staff feel really comfortable and supported. That's really, really important. And that, and I wish I could share all the stories about the kids and that family said that there was no way they could come on campus with masks, and they're doing it. And, although we can't see the smiles like we could a year plus ago, we know that kids are feeling, they seem to feel really comfortable, and it's become just kind of a norm in our community. And so, and there's a lot of laughter, and we can all tell, right, when someone's smiling through a mask. So that's really been important too. We'll keep meeting with the staff committee over the summer, and we'll have an update call with families this summer, as well as support planning for next school year. So keep a lookout for that information. Let's see. I think, the only other thing is that we'll also keep looking at the global part of the COVID pandemic. As I've shared before, gosh, it is so great to see the numbers so low right now in the US. But we also know places like India and Brazil and Japan and Canada and South Africa, et cetera, are still having some influx in COVID. and the infection rate. And we know that we're a global world, and so what's happening somewhere else can come right back to happening here again. So we'll keep looking at all the big picture parts of all this, and are so hopeful that maybe we're on the swing upward and back to more typical school. So, and we're excited to be a part of that too. So anyway, I know that was a lot, or maybe it was a little, I don't know, but I'll give a chance now for Melissa to open up the chat so we can see if there's anything I can clarify or any questions or comments anybody has. So we make sure that as you head towards summer fun, that you have the best knowledge you have about next school year. Wow, I must have done a fantastic job sharing all that information.
I have a ton of questions, but I know that there's no real answers for them at this point, that it would need to be closer to next school year. So
You have anything you want to share right now, Valerie?
Well, one of the things, I'm really glad that you're talking about waiting for the CDC guidance and what we think is going to be them letting up on that 3 foot for outside time so that students can go outside unmasked a little bit more. And I just am wondering if there would be any additional opportunity for them to take breaks from face masks inside, if that's going to be worked into the plan, because I'm one of those families that said that I really would like masking to continue, and that factors into my decisions about coming back to school. But I know that there are other families that don't want to continue with masking, and so I didn't know if there was an opportunity for a compromise there of taking a break when you're away from others or those kinds of things, the same way we're talking about using outside.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Melissa or Prana to give me the exact wording, but I think it says in our COVID pandemic plan that if learners are 12 feet away, they can take a few minute break from their mask now on campus. So that's been happening. Am I accurate, ladies? I'll let them look that up. Yeah. But, you know,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to move on to these other questions if you felt like you were done with that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think parents will be allowed back on campus next year?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, we've just started talking about that a little bit, about what that might look like. I think it really, you know, where we were as a community, as a culture in January, and where we are now as a community and culture, I wouldn't have predicted, and I'm guessing none of the rest of us would have either, in just a few months, you know, how much different our culture and our community is. And I wish I could predict where that's going to be in August. You know, I think we're going to keep asking families to share their thoughts, and most certainly staff in that same part. But for right now, you know, we really like the plan of kids coming in and out their own studio doors, because it, you know, for lots of reasons. So that might continue. You know, having more families, like one thing we know we want to improve on is we have to have more families subbing in the building next year. That was really a big reason why we could not get back on the ground with more kids in the building, because all the people that typically sub, not all, but many of them were not going to be available this year. And so I'm looking at a couple of you on the phone, on the call right now. You're seeing me. Yes, we need you back in the building subbing. So we know that's going to improve, and getting families back volunteering. Now, whether we'll have families drop off kids by walking in the building in fall, probably not. But, you know, we want to make ways for parents to safely be on campus, because that is part of what makes us who we are. So as we keep fleshing out that plan, and, you know, as you have thoughts on that, please do. But we're actually in the PPCs this week, we're asking staff to ask you if you could be a part of our subbing community. You know, you're not ever by yourself, co-teaching team, but we really need to build that back up again. And if you've noticed, I mean, we're fortunate, and we have a few positions that we have open for next year, but many schools have like all positions open next year, and we are so fortunate we're not in that situation. And subbing is those schools that have relied on places that they contract for subs have really struggled as well. And one thing I hope that you know about community Montessori is we will not do anything we cannot do well. And so we really need to have families that can put in and help, so that we can keep the spaces open. And we still anticipate quarantining is still going to happen next year. And right now that's been easier, because if a staff member was out quarantining, then the other staff member could be in there with 60% of the kids. But if that is 100% of the kids, it makes it almost impossible. So thank you for that question. That's what we know for now.
Will there be another update like this closer to the going back in session?
Yes, at least one in July, maybe a couple this summer. I have a feeling that these 8 or 10 weeks are going to go really fast, and so I'm going to say what I know that we can do, which is at least we'll have one around the second week of July.
And just to thank you, and that everything seems clear, and that we're looking for updates.
Great. Prina, were you able to look at the pandemic plan? Was I accurate?
I'm going to double check.
What'd you say? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. What else? Anything else?
Ooh, we just got a big one. Here we go. Ready? For early ed, what does social distancing look like? I'm specifically interested in understanding if the learners are prohibited from close interaction, given that younger learners of the early ed group learn a great deal through play and interaction with others. Prohibiting that interaction could seem detrimental, or at least concerning. So this is probably a new family. It is a new family now, looking at the name.
Yeah.
And maybe you could just do a little overview of what that's looking like.
Yeah, and that was part of that beauty thing I was talking about. Like, really, you wouldn't know, especially early ed and 6 to 9, who are such social beings, that their school year is any different, except they have a mask on their face. Otherwise, they are moving around, making conversations, having regular school. So that's been really beautiful, and it hasn't been an issue at all. So we haven't made them stay far away or anything like that. They just have their mask on while they do the typical school stuff. As the kids get older, it's just a more natural thing, and they're kind of doing more things on the computer with the hybrid model. And that's the other reason why we really want to go back to full school for everybody, so we can do less of the technology piece and give kids kind of a little bit of a lot of the levels have made goals like, yes, we want to keep the technology, these 4 things that we've learned, this has worked really well, but we also don't want them feeling like their head is in a computer all day. And so here's the other things we're going to do. So there's already big plans for almost every level in that way. But also just to have more, ongoing social interaction, especially as they get older.
Barbara, I just copied the comments about break from face masks in the chat. So it does talk about being able to take a break if they're 12 feet away from any learner after they create a plan with the teacher in the studio.
Kudos for me. I remembered something from this huge plan we created. But I know that is happening, and learners, I think, are doing a great job of asking for that support. Many studios have a place for that, so it hasn't been a problem.
If that didn't answer the question about masks enough, feel free to expand on that, but it seems like we covered it. And then, do you anticipate the elementary open house being virtual or in person?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know what it's going to be, honestly. I think that, what's neat about this year is a couple of things that we changed, right, during the pandemic. One was to change the start times for early ed and teens. I know there's some people that aren't feeling as great about that now as they were before, but it's going great for most families and most kids. And it really does fit that biological time clock of an adolescent. But we also moved the PPCs to the last 2 days of schools and the first 2 days of school, so that we really had that time to meet with families. And so although you may not be in the setting, in the individual environment, we've put that in place so that either way you get that one-on-one time with studio teachers to have those conversations about the studio for next year, especially for that about a third that have moved to a new studio each year. So for sure that's going to happen. Whether we do some kind of traditional open house, might be just for new families. That's a conversation we've had, or new to the studio families. So we might margin it down a little bit that way, or it may not happen. We'll see. But those are some of the things that have been discussed already.
That's still all we've got right now, unless anyone pops anything in there. Oh, here comes one. Any concerns with summer travel causing spikes in cases and potentially delaying the start of next school year?
Well, I mean, sure. I think the good news is that people did travel for spring break, and many scientists thought we'd see a spike from that, and it really didn't happen. Now where will we be in August in the pandemic? It's hard to tell. I know that Europe, for instance, is putting in place some parameters for people coming to Europe, into certain countries in Europe. And I think that might help. The CDC does still have the 7-day quarantine that they're recommending when you come back from international travel, to try to mitigate those processes as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if we see a spike. What we saw last year, if my memory serves me, is that the spike really happened more in September, October. So, of course, we only know what we know. We have a little bit to relate it to from living through this year. But now we have, vaccines, which are new to this dialogue. So I don't know, it'll be really interesting. And I know some families, have already said, well, if I get my child vaccinated and, can they start on campus if other ones can't? And there are so many questions like that. And honestly, I can't even fathom how we're going to keep track of all that right this minute. But one of the things we also took advantage of, although some of my coworkers are probably regretting this, but one of the things we took advantage of is, why not pull the Band-Aid off? Let's just do everything new this year. So we've started a new learner software program that we're implementing, so that has a parent portal. And so there could be a possibility, as you can go on now and change any demographics like email addresses and physical addresses and such, that maybe even you can upload or somehow put your information there about vaccination. So as we learn more, Prana's like having a heart attack right now. I don't know if you can see her eyes. But as we learn more about this new fancy software program that we're putting in place to try to better help that partnership with families, that might be something that we utilize. We're also getting new financial software and payroll software. So we really are moving it forward. So, we know that will help us to do some things better as well.
For those moving to new levels, when will they know which studio they're assigned to, and could they do a summer tour of that new space? Yeah,
so I assume that's probably a new family. I don't know.
It sounds like new level, actually, and no, she's not a new parent, it's Kara.
Oh, okay.
So I think she's moving up, maybe thinking about that new.
Yeah, that's not something we would ever do outside of a pandemic, so I can't imagine. Firstly, the studios are not ready until like the day before school starts. And so if you walked in the building right now, you'd see they're doing all the cleaning in many of the studios, except Early Ed doesn't usually do that, but they're moving stuff around, getting underneath things, cleaning the baseboards. Like, the studio is a part of that. And then, Glenn is working with Mike and John on their summer schedule of cleaning. So anyway, that will not be happening anytime in the summer. It is a busy, 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 busy time getting the building back ready for the fall. And then, typically towards the end of July, right around the time the staff comes back, which is the week before the learners come back, is when we finalize the rosters. So the staff are a part of that. We'll be having a draft conversation on our in-service days on Friday, and then next Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll be looking at those, and they'll be making comments like, oh, wait, I've already had their older sibling. And so we move kiddos around for those purposes. And then, sometimes what happens is in July, a family decides to move to Alaska, and now this child does not have any peers with them, so we take another look at it when we come back. So there's a lot of layers that go into that to make sure it's our best work, because there really isn't any chance to move people after that point. So we try to give it one more look as a staff when they return, which is July 29th and 30th. So usually by the end of the day on July 30th, we have the roster at its form, and we'll send it out shortly after. So I think you would expect to know any roster updates or for kiddos moving around that July 30th or first part of August.
Knowing that ages 2 to 11 cannot be vaccinated yet, shouldn't you consider waiting on returning to normal class until they have a chance to get vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all is a good point, and it probably was what our, maybe our thought process was before the infection rates have gotten so much lower. Now, low is relative. The infection rates that we have now have put Canada in a lockdown in most of the country, so, it all has to do with relativity. But for now, assuming things are like they are now in the fall or better, most of our families, want to be back on campus. First, the 200 families that wanted to stay full-time off campus for this semester. So, and the staff really wants kids back on campus, to be an authentic Montessori school with fidelity. We need kids back in the building. And so we will only do that if that's safe. We have not had any positive cases on campus since January. So, I think that is also really strong. Someone fact check me on that. I think that's accurate. It's accurate, Prana says. So I think, those all give us good reasons that we can have more kids back in the building and kind of follow this path that our families and staff want to be on. But of course, we're going to keep having our head up and our eyes open this whole summer as we learn more information and be ready to pivot. We're going to be ready to pivot all year long if that's what the need is. So that we have done all of those things before and are ready to do them again if needed to be. So Amy's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Amy. Okay. Yeah.
Amy.
Hey, thank you all for all this. I've just been wondering, we have been in hybrid this year, and for a variety of reasons, that is not going to work for us next year. And so I'm just wondering if we need to switch to family support now, just so I know we're not going to be doing hybrid next year, or if that will be completely reevaluated, like you'll ask the families anew, like whether they need family support or whether they want to do hybrid next year, if you have to pivot that way.
Thank you for asking that. That's very helpful. And I probably was not clear enough at the beginning of my conversation. So let me make that a little bit more clear. We're assuming everyone's going to be FSP next year, full-time family support, full-time on campus. The only exceptions right now is that if you're in the Woods program, we're going to have some flexibility for coming in a little later, and so we've adjusted that schedule, and there'll be more information to come at those August PPCs about when your child might be eligible. That mostly has to do if they're current on their work, and so more information to come on that. Otherwise, 3 to 14, we're expecting everyone to be on campus. We're expecting that's your enrollment. There will be a process to say, like, wait, my child's medically fragile and I really need a special plan for them. And so right now we only expect that to be a handful of families from the Family's Voice information that was shared. Some families are also have said things like, we love traveling more, can we do that more, especially as my child is younger. So we still have the absence waiver process. And so, that will still be there. And so if families, they've got a 6-year-old and their work has changed and they want to be able to travel more, they will help you. You'll help to create what plan you want. They'll give you feedback and then you can go do that. That's still an option for you. But as far as having people sign up for hybrid or full-time off campus or family support, we don't anticipate doing that right now. We'll be ready to pivot if we need to. But if the infection rate stays as it is now, or better than it is now, we're just assuming everyone's going to be full-time on campus. And then, in the cupola notes, probably be a Google form If a family says, oh, you know, we just got back from the doctor, we really feel like our child's medically fragile, we want to try to create a little bit different plan for them, or we have a very unique situation and we'd like to create a different plan for our child, then there'll be a way for you to communicate that, and over the summer we'll help to work out a plan. If it's just like, I think we just want a virtual school, you know, then we'll probably be saying like, we're a Montessori school, you know, and we want to help you, but we can't be everything to everybody. And so, you know, from the families that gave the families voice information, it seems like there's a very small percentage of our families that feel like they don't want to be on campus full time next year. So we will have a way for those families that we assume are probably in that medically fragile or very specific situation to share that, so we can see if that's something we can support, you know, and do it well.
It does. I guess I just want to make sure when you say, you know, pivot, we'll be ready to pivot if there is a pivot, if we're not going to be forced to be in hybrid because we were in hybrid this year when we want family support.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And you're not alone in that process either. And, you know, so yes, we will start over if we need to pivot with that conversation. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
I didn't see any other hands raised. Anybody else need to say anything or leave a question?
Okay, well, I'll stay on a minute if anyone has anything else. And good to see so many of your smiling faces. And we really appreciate you. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.